Well, thanks. My name is Ari Levy. I'm a tech reporter here in San Francisco with CNBC.com. I've been at the company for about 9 months. I was at Bloomberg for 11 years before that, and I'm going to moderate this panel. So I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves. This is Teen to my right.
Hi, Teen Zwo, CEO of a company called Zora. We do subscription, commerce, billing, and finance. So if you run a subscription business, and I suspect that's a lot of the people in the room, we help you automate all the back-end operations and help you scale your business.
Rizwana.
Hi, my name's Rizwana, and I'm the CEO of Peak, which is a platform for activities. So it's most similar to OpenTable. We work with consumers to help them find fun things to do. So if you want to go kayaking or go on a wine tour, you're able to come to peak.com and book cool things to do. And then we actually work with the small businesses to provide them with online booking capabilities. So they have an online booking widget that they can put on their own website, and we provide them with tools to run their whole business.
Andrew, no relation?
Yeah, same last name, but I pronounce it the correct way. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Criticism. We do mobile app performance monitoring. What that means is if an app is slow or laggy, maybe transactions are dropping, companies use our product to quickly find and fix those performance problems and drive additional revenue.
Seth.
Last, perhaps least. My name's Seth Besmernick. I am the CEO of Conductor. We are a web presence management software company based in New York. And what that is in simplified terms, we're a combination of, we help you do your SEO, we help you do your content marketing in a single solution, largely for medium to large brands.
Okay, so maybe to frame the conversation a little bit, each of you can just talk briefly about how you measure customer success internally, what the sort of structure is of your organization, if you have one, or just broadly how you're able to look at it and measure it. Team.
Yeah, so we measure customer success in a number of different ways. And so there's certainly the financial measure, which includes churn, retention, net retention score, right, or net retention dollar value, right? So how much did you churn, how much did you upsell, and is it a net positive number? We also track NPS scores. We do a little bit of a nuance around it. I think the spread is actually just as important as the number, and so we look at customer satisfaction scores, if you will, measured against the recommended question. And then we look at a whole bunch of metrics in terms of how customers use. And so we have this thing where we boil down, hey, if our mission is to help customers be successful in the subscription economy, what is it that we actually have to do for them? We boil it down to 9 things, things like we help them do billing, we help them do collections, we help them acquire customers, we help them close the books. And then we have specific measurements around those things, right? So against each of these 9 things is how many days does it take to close the books? Do we help them with their DSO? Do we bring it down? How many days does it take to get out the bills? And so there's not one single measure. We really look at the complete picture to generate essentially a customer health scorecard, if you will, for each customer.
And do you have a single person who is sort of owns that?
We have a head of customer success. So we have a senior vice president of customer success that reports to me, that runs the entire customer operations, so our customer success managers and our customer support organization. And they obviously have strong tentacles and relationships with the other parts of the organization.
Rizwana, how's your organization run?
So we're a little bit smaller than Zora, so we're kind of at about 45 people right now. And so our structure is, we're still figuring some of these things out. So a lot of the things that were just mentioned, we're also utilizing, especially as they refer to things like churn and also activations in the first 90 days. What are the major milestones that people want to hit in order to make sure that they're sticky with the product? We're actually in a phase where we're actually looking for a director of customer success. So this is a great place to be. So if you're looking for a new role, definitely come and hit me up at the end.
Taking resumes?
Exactly, I am. I'm
Raise your hand if you're looking for a new job.
But precisely because we think that we're getting to a point where, there's quite a few people that are working within that group, but you need to make sure that, there is somebody who's an advocate for the customer beyond those in the product and sales team. And so I think what we're seeing is that as we scale, we really need to make sure that there's really strong leadership in that part of the team, because there are tremendous level, when it comes to metrics, there's so much you can measure to kind of see what's working and what isn't working, and I think we have a lot more to invest in doing in that space.
It's definitely evolved a lot over time. We do have a support organization where, well, even outside of support, we're trying for customer success to permeate the entire organization, but Within there, they're ultimately responsible. We do have, we did just hire someone to only do customer success. In terms of metrics, we look at a lot of different things. We actually use Totango, so we have our Totango score, and we're shoving all of that data into Salesforce, which is we use as our hub. In addition to Totango scores, we have a bunch of product usage data that we also get into Salesforce. And since we sell into apps, we have a bunch of the app-related data and how well they've instrumented it. The other thing we look at is cohorts. So we have a land and expand type model where it's very important that our initial customer within your organization is successful. And so we try to look at how if those cohorts are growing over time, and it's one indicator. We also look at churn, but obviously it's a lag. By that time, it's too late, so we try to get in front of it.
Seth?
Yeah, so metrics-wise, very similar to Teen. Ultimately, you have the financial metrics. Are your customers staying with you? Are they growing? We also, since our customers run on anywhere from 12 to 36-month contracts, we also look at metrics like engagement. So are they using the product? I think we're constantly trying to figure out what are the outcomes they're trying to get with our product and try to measure that. We're starting to look at something what we think about like engagement churn. So the customer hasn't churned in terms of their contract; they're still paying you, but they've churned in terms of their usage. So they're sort of that's a good opportunity to obviously get ahead of things. Structurally, for our business, customer success is a big part of it. We're in a space where when someone buys Conductor, it's generally the first time they've ever bought a product in our category versus like if you buy CRM, you're buying like better CRM that's better, faster than something else you had, at least in terms of the category. So since we started the company, we're like, if our customers are not successful with our platform, then they're gonna, their bosses or someone in their organization are gonna be like, oh, that whole, web presence space, that's all junk. Let's go do social media or something else. So as a result, we've always invested very heavily in supporting our customers, and we sell it as an experience where it's software and people together bring you an experience. So we've got a CSM group that is structured based on the different types of customers, so large companies, smaller companies. We have a strategic accounts group, and these guys are doing renewals and upsells. So initially, we had CSMs doing everything, renewing, upselling, onboarding, education, support, everything. And then it's just been a constant like chipping away and trying to bifurcate that. And getting the dollars away from them was a good decision. We have a support team that does incoming support, help desk, chat, manage the community. And then we're in the process of trying to think about two things, which we haven't figured out, which is how do you handle onboarding, and do you sort of delineate separate resources for that? And then the other thing is this whole notion of like product engagement more from like a user experience perspective. So how do you use automation inside your product combined with sort of emailing automation to drive better retention? So I think we've got we've got our hands in a bunch of different stuff, and we're as much as I'm speaking up here, I'm listening to sessions trying to figure it out myself.
And Seth, who runs customer success at your company?
We have a guy, and he runs customer success, including the support side and the dollar side. So he manages a pretty big P&L in terms of all renewals, all growth revenue, and then all support, all of that. So it's kind of a big job. Not sure. It's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Teen, you've obviously been following the subscription economy for many years, going back to days at Salesforce. What should the relationship be like between marketing and customer success? Should they be part of the same organization, or should they be in just daily communication?
I think if marketing and customer success, I think if you're a B2C company, right? If you're not going through more of a traditional sales channel, right? It's one-click purchase and so on and so forth. Then customer success winds up taking more of a customer loyalty, right? Repeat purchase, customer retention feel, and in that type of company, I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense to combine marketing and customer success, or at least make sure they're a lot more tightly bound. I suspect most of the people in this company, given it's Silicon Valley, there's a lot of SaaS, there's going to be a little bit more B2B, there's a sales channel involved, and so it's a little bit more complicated, right? And marketing has more of an indirect impact on the customers versus a direct impact. And in those environments, I think it makes more sense to have customer success be part of, say the services organization, even the sales organization, right? Or a standalone organization, but combining it with marketing would make less sense.
So what's the what's the ideal makeup of a customer success executive? Like 5 years ago, what would that person have been doing?
So there seems to be, sort of a three dimensions to this, right? And so as a customer success person, really just a stronger support person as an escalation point. Are they really a salesperson, right? And they might not be closing new deals, right? But they're closing renewal deals or keeping the customer happy, but they have a revenue component in their head, whether it's new revenue upsells or renewals. Or it's a services person that knows how to go and deep with the customers and make sure the software that you're selling or the technology you're selling is properly implemented. And it seems to get pulled across all three, right? And so what we find is we have a checklist of folks where we want the relationship skills of a sales-oriented person, but we want the business process and business impact skills of a services person, and then we want the natural empathy, right, and operational skills of a strong support person. And so we try to find the right balance point between those three things.
And Rizwana, when you're hiring in general, not just for the customer success role, how much do you look for specifically for people who, when they're interviewing, they're talking about satisfying customers? So it's like embedded, it's part of the DNA of the person.
I think it's tremendously important because if you don't have that culture in the early days, you're not going to be able to build upon that. And I think that when...
And did you know that from the beginning?
I think that it's probably something that we've figured out over time. And there's been some occasions where perhaps we haven't found the right person and realized that if it wasn't in their DNA to have that empathy and that desire to help, perhaps they weren't able to fulfill kind of on our mission. I think the other thing is you don't have to have every single person have the exact perfect combination of skills. And so it's often the case that, some of the things that Tina was just talking about, you want somebody who's business and process orientated and deeply kind of analytical. And you also want somebody who's very empathetic and can understand the concerns of the customer. It doesn't have to be the exact same person. And there may be scenarios where you say, look, I'm going to partner two people up with each other, as long as we have that skill set in the organization. There's also, we were just talking about, it would be great if somebody who is doing customer success had a product background, because obviously some of the issues that people might have are actually product related, and there may be a barrier if the customer success individual doesn't have that engagement around product and that communication between your product team as well. And so, in a perfect world, that person would also, bring that to bear as well. I think within your context, I think you've really got to look at your organization and see, where do I already have strengths and where do I need things where somebody might come in and be complementary? And based upon that, you might actually hire somebody who's slightly different based on what you already have in the organization. But in a perfect world, you would have all of those.
Yeah. Andrew, so as someone building a very technical product, how much product expertise does the person or the people need who are directly interacting with customers?
Right. They do need quite a bit. In fact, that's the primary reason why our support engineers, and I say engineer there, and I mean it, we do hire people that have technical or some programming background to be able to take on that role, because on the other end of the channel, our users can be anyone from a developer, an IT ops person. It could be a product manager as well. So they need to be able to be that trusted advisor for them, and they really look to us to be a thought leader on what is, especially since mobile is still relatively new. They don't understand what they should be tracking, what they should be looking at, and then what is the best way to actually instrument the product. And it gets tricky because they could be very successful using one small part of our product, but that won't help us in the end, build a big, great company. And so you mentioned marketing before, and marketing, we'll look at, oftentimes we'll send out an NPS survey, and that could actually be false, because it could show that, yeah, your users are using one part of your product and they're all very happy, but at the end of the day, they're not actually the types of customers that you'd want long term. So that's why it's important that they are technical enough to understand the product, go back to the end, our customer, and say, hey, look at all these issues you're missing out on. This is the best practices. This is what you should be looking at.
And so Seth, you started in 2010, is that right?
Yeah, we launched our product in 2010.
Maybe talk a little bit about how you view this differently now than from 5 years ago, and is there a type of person you've realized you need to hire now that maybe wasn't obvious then?
Yeah. we view things a lot differently now. You kind of think about customer success in one way is like, it's almost like shock absorbers in a sense where it's like, this is where you need to be to get value, for your customers to get value. This is where like the product is today, and like they've got to figure out how to like bridge that gap. You think about like if Google, when they first started, they were like, if anyone was like a very early Google customer, like you couldn't even like get somebody on the phone. There wasn't even like an 800 number, but the company was growing. They weren't losing customers, and they were growing the hell out of them without any customer success. And it wasn't until they had to start realizing like they can sell people more things if they actually call them up. So when we started, I think we were making up for a lot like when we launched our product, we had this big infrastructure, but the actual application that people used was pretty minimal. So but we wanted to get it out there. So the people we hired were actually like trying to plug holes and do things the product didn't do. Now we sort of look at it. I was talking to someone who runs customer success for a very successful large software company. Hundreds of people on the team. It's about a 1,000-person company, and she said that she realized that the more you talk to your customers in person, it's very profound, right? But the more you talk to them in person, the less loyal they become to you. So which is kind of like, it goes very much against the grain of what we used to think about, which is like, oh, well, we're going to have CSMs, they're going to call you weekly and monthly, and they're going to be with you. And to think that those people actually are, like your customers are slowly building resentment for you the more they have to speak with you is very profound for me to think that. The other thing is to be careful about is, do you have your shock absorbers, vis-a-vis your CSMs, are they insulating your product management and your UX and your engineering and ultimately your leadership? Are they insulating you from the realities and the flaws of your product? And I think, sometimes, like I've just been, I know myself, I'm just sort of getting more in the weeds in certain areas, and I'm like, are you serious? That's what customers have to do? Like even basic things, like just resetting a password, right? And you end up like realizing like, oh yeah, that's okay, the CSM takes care of that. And you end up realizing that it could insulate you. So I think that's a little bit of the difference we think about things now, and I think now we're trying to figure out like, how do we get customers to get to their outcomes like as fast as possible and not have to need a person, and then how do we use our people to do things that you can't get with any automation or technology, like how do we help them with their strategy? How do we help them like understand their business goals and map our products to their particular objectives and really get them to do things that are like more strategic advisory work? And that's where we're trying to shift the CSM team, and and that's a lot of our.
And how much of that automation is custom built versus off the shelf from someone else?
Sure. So, automation, when I think about automation, I sort of think about not so much like automation like as a computer, but you sort of think about like one-to-many type things. So, the basics are, having a really good knowledge base and then having really good sort of help desk and ticketing and just more scalable ways of getting customers what they want fast. I mean, I realize like customers, well, like they don't want to wait till Thursday when they have their hour session with their CSM. They want to get an answer today. So how do you make that available, with the quality of the support, but that available immediately? Actually, I came to this sort of a little bit of this awakening. It was a Sunday afternoon in New York, and I wanted to get a report to my executive team just about, just on usage of our product, and I needed it out of Totango, and I actually couldn't figure out how to create this report in Totango. So there's this big help button on the right side, and I filled it out, and like 2 hours later, this guy writes me back. He set the report up for me, and he figured out how to do it, and I was like, this is awesome. Like, I'm gonna have my report for tomorrow, and I was like, if I'm in Conductor and I have that problem on a Sunday, I'm gonna have to wait till Monday, or I have to get my CSM cell phone on the phone. So that really like built my love for Totango to even greater heights.
I see a segment called Sundays with Totango.
Sundays with Totango.
Did you want to say something, Pete?
Yeah, so I mean, what Seth said resonates, right? And so I think I've shared maybe at one of these conferences, the whole title, customer success, was started at Salesforce, and we were trying to solve a problem. We created a role, didn't know what to call it. One of calling it customer success, and so part of me, it's going to be tough to say this in this crowd, but part of me almost regrets, naming that title, right? Because what the sense that you get sometimes is okay, we know these business models, these recurring business models, really demand customer retention, customer renewals, and so the customers have to be successful. But by creating a department sometimes called customer success, you accidentally say, okay, well, those guys solve the problem, right? Those guys solve the problem, those guys deal with the issue. And versus saying, look, the whole company has to be about customer success. The whole company has to think about what it means the product organization needs to think about, well, how do we build the technology so that we don't need human beings to interfere unless, there's an escalation point, right? And so the danger of having a customer success department, and I don't think it has to be this way, you can overcome it, but the danger is that you actually abdicate customer success at the company level and then drive it down to the department level and not actually think about it more strategically.
So do you have ways at Zuora of measuring every employee in some way through their customer success, or is it just, how do you do it?
So the short story is we came up with a common vision for the whole company. For us, it's the world subscribed. That's what we're trying to create, right? A world that's all in the subscription economy. The mission, which is what we do on a daily basis to do that, is to make customers successful in the subscription economy. Okay, well, what does that actually mean? And so we talk about every company is trying to deliver a subscription experience, right? That's similar to what Seth just described, that Totango delivers to their customers. And then what are the tools that really enable you to do that, right? And for us, it's about doing 9 specific things. And then we said, okay, well, how do we connect everything the company does back to these 9 things, right? So every feature we do has to be connected back. Every support case we do has to be connected back. Every conversation we have through our sales and our services and our customer success team has to be taken back to that. And that's how we bind the whole company against one unified view of how we make customers successful.
Andrew, how many customers are you now? How
What's
many
that?
customers do you have now?
We have a few hundred enterprise customers. We have thousands on our freemium, in the free tiers. But
How do you serve enterprises differently than freemium or just the SMBs, do-it-yourselfers?
it's a great question. That's one thing that's changed a lot over time. Is when we first started, we just treated everyone equally, and that quickly didn't scale. But I think that's the point when you're a younger company, is to do those unscalable things. And over time we tried. We had our self-service tier, and on that tier, it was kind of your long tail plus, your long tail paid tier, and the cost or the amounts that we were getting paid from that versus our enterprise contracts it was like night and day. But yet, we both treated them as paying customers. We eventually deprecated the tier because we wanted them to. We said, well, it might as well be free for that group. Let's make the free tier successful enough where if they want to graduate to the paid tiers, then there's a nice path to doing so, and they can get the best parts of our product in more of a trial. And then, of course, on the enterprise side, that's where we spend a lot of our, at least our manpower. We try to make the free users driven by our community, a lot of self-service documentation, education, and that same material can be used with your enterprise customers as well. So it's actually serving the whole community. There's just higher touch and more of a person behind those interactions.
So does NPS become more important with smaller customers?
My point before was just that I think NPS is it's great because you do want to get a general sense of what if your customer base would recommend you, but of course it's a sample, it's not real time. You send it out maybe once a quarter, so you don't have the pulse, the heartbeat of the company at all times. And again, you have to really look at product usage. At least from our standpoint, you have to look at are they all in, because it could be the wrong number. In fact, we've been trying to think about what is that one number that we could track for customer success. And for us, it's pretty difficult. But I did hear one company that does it pretty well, which is DocuSign. And for them, it's the number of envelopes that are sent. And it's very straightforward. The more that you're doing that, the more engaged and successful of a customer you are. So we're trying to find that one number, but it's it can be hard.
I think we all are.
Yeah.
Riz, want to talk about how you work with, I guess, premium customers? I don't know what you call them, but premium versus sort of the longer tail, and the differences in how you gauge customer satisfaction there.
Yeah, so I think we're in a slightly different business in the sense that there are definitely network effects locally in each market, and so for us, there can be a reason to overinvest in this, somebody who might be a small company because they're in a region where actually they can be evangelists. So as an example, if you're in San Francisco or you're in New York, it turns out that other tour and activity operators, and you're speaking to each other, and there's this word of mouth, and there's that there are network effects that grow. And so within the context of that, you really want to make sure that every operator in these key markets is successful despite their size. And so that means that they might not, you might not have as much revenue coming from them, but they're actually driving, word of mouth and success. And they might actually also be influencers within a specific market. And so for us, you've got to actually take into account much more than just the revenue. It's actually, well, is this a key market for us or a key vertical? So it may be the case that you're going after a specific type of operator. Maybe kayak tours are the exact type that we want to go after across the US. And so for us, we've actually really got to take into account a multitude of variables that don't just refer to premium clients being revenue based. And so that's where we're, and in our stage, we're kind of over-investing in those because we realize that there's this tipping in certain markets. As soon as you get a certain market share, everybody wants to use your software, because if I don't have an online booking tool and my competitor does, then all of a sudden I'm losing out on bookings when people are coming to my website. And so you really want to make sure that you're helping that tipping point get reached in certain markets. And so that doesn't mean that your behavior can be different market by market based on the stage that you're in. And that's when looking at cohorts becomes very important, and the age of the market and where you're at in terms of market share. And so that defines our behavior more so than saying, look, this is a really big operator versus a small one.
Do you get feedback on every tour?
Yeah, we do. So that's something that but we do that for our activity operators. So part of the software allows every single tour operator to be able to get feedback on every single experience, which is actually really valuable for them, because then they're able to say, actually, I brought on a new guide and I've got 30 people in my organization, and now I've realized that I've been getting poor reviews on TripAdvisor off the back of this one tour and this one tour guide. And so you're actually helping them locate the problems in their business.
Are there any particular types of tours that get better responses than others?
We haven't seen that. Often, actually, the people who are getting the best responses are those that ask for them also in person, as they're kind of having the conversations at the end, and ask for reviews. But we haven't seen any specific differences in that. It does make a difference if you're creating a great email, though, right? And so we have templates to help people, and also just making sure that you can decide the cadence. And so the quicker that is after someone's done their tour, we make sure that it's done within the context of an email, so you can just put your 3, 4, 5-star rating in the email straight away, and so that also helps you get reviews.
Seth, so you said things have evolved quite a bit. How much of a science is it now?
Not enough of a science. I think we're trying. I mean, that's the magic number, right? Is what we're in this never-ending pursuit for. I mean, in our business, we find that high NPS, NPS doesn't correlate with renewals. Usage doesn't correlate with renewals, and it's really hard to find that what is that one thing that actually, because you find you can have really strong usage, but you might not have really good executive sort of buy-in, right? Or they might not be, they might not be, you might have a perception problem, which is sort of hard to measure. Or the customer might hate your product, but it's too hard for them to rip it out because they got 3 other projects going. So it's hard to find that piece there. So I guess just I'm kind of rambling. It's really not that scientific, but we are using a lot of data. We are looking at we do look at our CSMs, and we look at engagement. We look at NPS. We look at renewal rates by CSMs. We look at support tickets, and we look at correlations like support tickets to community impressions, and are people filing less tickets and going to our community more and things like that. So we're trying to make improvements, but it's sort of like attacking it with more of a buckshot gun than
Is there anything that we know definitively correlates with renewals, other than writing checks?
I mean, I know the things you don't want to do if you don't want to get renewals. I mean, trying to figure out what your customers' outcome that they're trying to get, and really trying to help articulate back to them that they're achieving the outcome. So for a while, we were very focused on hey, look at all the people who are using the product, and then we'd be like, come renew because everybody's using it. And it's ultimately the person who's writing the check doesn't really give a shit if anyone's using the product. That they care about I bought this product, is it accomplishing my goal? Am I getting more efficient? Am I making more money? Am I beating my competitor? Whatever it is. So we're trying to actually just do a better job of how we communicate inside the organization, because we generally start in somewhere in the marketing department, and we work our way to the CMO and to the CEO, and when you get to that level, they want to know about value. So I think that's a shift in us. Focus on outcomes versus the ultimate usage and things like that.
Do you need? Oh yeah.
I mean, so this is an obvious answer, but the thing that correlates strongest to renewals is you're an indispensable part of what they do, and they're alternatives, right? Or they're substitutes, or they're just don't do as good a job.
But
right?
do they tell you that you're indispensable, or do you just know it by the logs, whatever the data that you have?
So is it an art or is it a science? I mean, it's a big data world, right? And so if you're not looking at data, if you're not looking at statistics, then you're missing a whole new view of things.
That's what they tell me.
But including the journalism space, right? But at the end of the day, right? You can't be disconnected from what you do, right? Ultimately, every company in this room is different. The experience that they're trying to deliver, the value proposition they're trying to deliver is different. And so it's got to map to that, right? So there's not going to be one metric for everybody, but you got to look at what it is that you do, and does it truly deliver value? And then you got to determine, okay, what are the specific metrics that you can look at that correlate to your hypotheses, and then test it, and then iterate over time.
But I think if you just look at like if you put yourself in the shoes of the customer and you say if that customer tomorrow, if you just shut the product off, right? Just all passwords are blocked. Like what would be all the things that fall apart in that company? And the larger the list, right? The more they need you, and the more you don't. And that's sort of like a very one-sided way to look at it. But
That's when you know, right?
yeah, I look at like Salesforce. We use Salesforce. Like they shut us off, right? It's like, it's like there's a lot of stuff that's going to break down at Conductor, and it's.
You're about to get hit with a bigger Salesforce bill.
We got a long-term deal.
I think the point of talking about data is that you really want to use that data to find non-obvious issues, right? So, there are going to be some obvious issues which you can then look at and say, oh, well, the data plays out. But often it's actually when you don't have a specific hypothesis and you're looking at correlations and then you're saying, well, what's causing that correlation, and you're backing that out. And so I think a lot of this isn't, the reason that it can't be fully reliant on data is because part of this has to also be this approach of problem solving and trying to figure out what the different reasons could be. And so the data can point you in the right direction, but it's not necessarily going to give you the answers. You're going to have to test some different version of what you were doing before in order to be able to make those decisions. And that's why I think that although it's a science, the art piece of it is figuring out what you can test and what might be causing this correlation that you're seeing.
I think, there's a reason that companies like Totango are still, in the grand scheme of things, relatively new, is that there's a lot of companies in this space coming out to attack the problem. Big data and BI platforms are coming out all the time, and with Salesforce Wave not too long ago. The fact is, it is still early days, so I don't think we should feel too bad if we, are still trying to wrap our heads around the science. But I would argue, maybe you guys would disagree, that at least we being B2B companies, have it a little bit easier than the B2C companies trying to track customer journey. I actually think that's a harder problem than the one that we're trying to solve.
So, do any of you have a model, a model example of who does, I guess, both customer success really well? You may not know who actually monitors it really well, but is there a company that you model your organization after, just because of the experience you have, or because of how your employees view other companies? Sorry for the rambling.
I think a few that come to mind would be, they're not necessarily technology companies, but someone like Southwest Airlines, where maybe it's more of a values and cultural thing, but they've seemed to have embodied what they're trying to sell to their customers. Whole Foods, same way. They've really figured out what do their customers really care about. Let's bring those to right up in your face. Show me the birth certificate of that chicken. That's what I want to see. And I think that's important. And that's what Seth was saying is what do your customers view as success, and bringing that to the
Those are both Texas companies, for what it's worth.
Yeah. I think a company that does a great job of using kind of data to inform them around what's going to happen with their customers is HubSpot. I think they've done an awesome job of really utilizing metrics in order to have them go through the entire chain. So as an example, they're able to predict customers who are about to churn and the reasons why. So, they might not be using certain features and things like that, but they make sure that information goes all the way back to their sales team. So they're informing their sales team about their kind of effective, like their portfolio of companies that they're bringing on, so that they too can see what made a customer successful and can then start changing how they go after certain clients. And if someone's not a fit, they're not going to bring them on because they can see down the road that customer isn't getting the value that they want. So I think they do a great job.
Anyone on the flip side who's just been a total disaster?
The thing that's interesting is like HubSpot does do a great job. We have a common board member. They figured out. So we get some information. They figured, and it's all public stuff, but they figured out. What features do people need to use that really have a high correlation with renewals? They've got some really sophisticated automation on how to drive usage. The thing is, they've got a lower renewal rate, as a public company than like a lot of the SaaS companies who have really crappy customer success, or crappy, maybe not crappy, but less good. So I think I think that it's a function of like ultimately like it really comes back to like it's a product problem, right? It's a product problem that when people can't see your product, there's a product piece to it over the long term. Early days, you have to evangelize, you have to push, you have to get people successful, but eventually, you got to solve it with a better experience and a better problem. And to the extent customer success can help you with that, then that's how we're trying to figure out how to do it, because versus just using it as duct tape and bubble gum trying to plug holes.
Yeah, and Andrew made an interesting comment that says you thought B2B is easier than B2C. And there's a lot of validity to that view. I have the opposite view, which is B2B is more complex because you have a lot more people involved, right? And B2C, you can often narrow down to a specific use case, and B2B, your product can be broad. You touch a lot of different people in the organization, right? Your NPS score might be great for the managers, but crappy in the day-to-day users, or the other way around. And so the picture is just a lot more nuanced. But when you narrow down to the B2C examples that we all use in our personal lives, the products and services where you could just feel that the product and service is adapting to how you're using it, right? And being more customized, more personalized, and you can actually start to tweak it, right? And so when Nest pushes, energy reports to you, right? When the Tesla self-updates with a new dashboard, right? When a new version of the phone operating system gets pushed, you're like, oh, these features. You can just feel the products adapting. Those are the ones where you really start to feel that those are the guys that are doing really, really well, right? The product is constantly adapting, iterating, getting better and better. And I think we're all getting used to those type of things. The question for us is how do you build that back into a B2B context, right? Because the B2C context is just simply a lot more narrow.
Well, it was going to be my last question, but since you sort of led into it, I'll ask it now. So how does this look in 5 years? If this plays out the way that you think it will or that you would like it to, how the role of customer success in your company, what will it be? Maybe we'll start at the other end, Seth.
Man, that's tough. I'm trying to figure out what it's going to be today. I think in the future, there's the master vision of what you want, right? Which is, you want it so whether you're working with a mid-market company or an enterprise, they can get into the product. The product can help figure out what they're trying to accomplish with it, and in as low friction of a way possible, get them to start getting value as quickly as possible. Help them. The product can help them figure out, what have they done and what's the value of that, and you want your product to do it all. You want your user experience to be there, and then you want your customer success team to be there when people defect. When you see, someone can't get past this stage and they keep getting stuck there. How do I be proactive and go reach out to them? Or how do I use information from my customer base to come back and make my product better? But where I want to get our customer success team is where it's not something that's required for customers to become in the euphoric state with us. It's something that is more for edge cases that we need to do that we use either we use proactively to get them to that sort of euphoric state, or we're using it proactively as a way to build a relationship and grow them so we can give them more products and expand their usage and ultimately grow them as customers. So it's a little bit of the it's almost like that's my view.
Mm-hmm. Andrew.
So I agree with what Seth was saying, and I think for for me, it's really about going back to being proactive, getting in front of any suspected issues. So the further up we can rewind the clock from when a customer might churn, the better, for everyone. It'll make them happier, make us happier. And the data we need around that and the measurement is something we're focused on today. And I'm hoping 5 years from now we've really nailed that down.
Let me ask, how often do you see an instance of churn where it's just a total head scratcher, where it looked like everything looked like it was okay, and then all of a sudden they don't renew? Maybe that's a tough one, but
it's a tough one to answer. But in those cases, it goes back to some of the like interpersonal relationships at work. Some CIO took another CIO out to golf, and then suddenly.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Golf.
Yeah.
I had a golf one the other day.
Yeah, those. How do you measure that? It's tough.
I thought the whole golf thing was dead. That's what they tell me.
It's poker.
It's poker now.
There's not that much golf in our game, so that's not as much of an indicator. For us, I think over the next 5 years, it's really around us being able to do a good job of also helping our operators to be able to make use of more of the features that we're pushing out. So, we touched a little bit about mobile. It's really changing the way that small businesses like, wine tours or food tours are able to run their business, because all of a sudden they have this computer in their pocket and they don't ever have to get behind a desk, and now they can run their entire business through their phone. And so as we do more and more in terms of innovating there, you're in a position where the product just has a different use case and can fulfill the needs of other people. And so for us, customer success is not only delivering value today, but also delivering value and educating our operators over their whole life cycle as we give them more and more tools that can actually help them. And so I think for us, it's about thinking about customer success, not only in terms of making sure that people are able to get as much as they can out of the system today, but also ensuring that over the long term, as we're adding all of these things that we think are very fundamental to them, they learn about them and can use them. Because there's always this risk that over the first 90 days, you do this awesome job of onboarding people and making sure they know where you're at. But in a year's time, you've moved a ton and they don't know what they can do.
Yeah, I mean, if you know a little bit about us, we evangelize this concept called the subscription economy, and the idea there is that the last 100 years have been more of a product economy, right? Mass production, industrialization, and how many units can we ship, and the customer's a little bit of a customer's anonymous, right? A lot of manufacturers don't even know who their end customers are unless they send in, some registration card or call customer support. And what we're seeing is a return to relationships, right? A return to relationships, which is more of a natural, buyer-vendor type of relationship. And you think about some of the best services that you have, right? Whether it's your nanny, it's your Uber driver, it's your lawyer, it's your accountant. There's something about the relationship that's special, and the other side knows a lot about you. And what we're seeing now is with technology, right? You can actually have one-to-one relationship at scale, right? Uber knows about you. You can actually walk into a car and it's your music that's being played on the taxi now because they know your Spotify account. And so there's a return to relationship that's going on. And so you talk about 5 years from now, and again, this might be a little bit controversial, but I would love to see everybody in the room that's a customer success professional basically work them out of a job, right? Work themselves out of a job and bring this idea of relationships back into the product, back into the organization, where it's just simply a natural part of how we do business with each other, right? It's built on relationships, it's built on our knowledge of each other. And you think about the competitive advantage that you have, it's easy for someone down the street to reverse engineer your product, come up with a different product, right? But your knowledge of your customers and the relationships that you have with them, that's something that others don't have, right? That ultimately becomes a competitive advantage, and that ultimately is a much more solid basis for the success of a business.
Yeah, you don't start a company to have a giant customer success organization, and it's not an indicator of success to have it. You have a lot of salespeople. That could mean maybe you're selling a lot. Maybe right, even that could be argued. But I think it's just the vision is like how do you do it as smart as possible. So if you are going to do it, how do you do it well and do it so you're being productive, right, and and moving yourself closer to what Team illustrates is the future, which I think is a good future.
Got it. Well, I see triple zeros in front, and my understanding is that it's pretty late in the day, so I think we're going to wrap up. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks to Totango.